Hi, and welcome back to Rainbow. This is Level 1, Week 1 and 2 lesson plans.
First, we have our vault stations.
Our first station is going to be a proper hurdle drill. We'll have 2 setups, and there'll be 1 student at each setup working on their hurdle, landing in the hoop with 2 feet and jumping out. Our second station will be 2 separate setups, and the students will be rotating between the 2 after sanitizing. So the first will be running and pushing the block, turning around, running and pushing it back. Then after sanitizing, they'll switch and they'll work on the run proper hurdle to the springboard, working on jumping with 2 feet and landing in a safety stop. Our next station will be a double setup. There'll be 1 student on each block working on their hands on knees or hands on feet, trying to keep their arms straight and their legs together. Then they'll jump off and land on 2 feet in a safety stop. Our last station will also be a double setup. The students will lay on their mat and they'll be working on their arch hold with their feet together and their arms by their ears. Floor stations. Our first station will be a double setup. Each student will be on their own mat and they'll be working on their forward roll. So hands up, hands down, they'll roll, their feet will land on the floor and they'll try to stand, keeping their arms by their ears. Our second station will also be a double setup. Each student will be on their own thick Velcro line and they're going to work on their rock and roll with pizza hands, trying to rock back and squish both hands onto the floor, lifting their knees over their head. Our next station will also be a double setup. Each student will have their own Velcro line to work on their broken leg walk. So 1 foot will be on the line, hands will be on the floor, and they'll hop their hands, their foot, all the way down, keeping 1 leg straight in the air. Our last station will also be a double setup, and the students will be working on their lunge switches. So they'll start in a lunge, ears covered, and they'll jump and switch to their opposite lunge. Bar stations. Our first station will be a double setup. The students will put their hands on the floor bar and their feet on the block and hold their push-up, counting to 10. Our next station will also be a double setup. The students will stand on a large block, and then they'll be working on their jump to front support 3 times in a row, trying to push to straight arms in a good hollow position. Our next station will be a double station. The students will sit on the ground, hold their noodle, and try and hold their tuck position with a hollow chest and their arms straight and their toes off the ground. Our last station will be 2 different stations. So the first one will be the chin-up pullover with a spot from a coach, working on independence, getting their arms straight into a good front support. Then they'll sanitize and switch to the other station, which will be doing our pike hold with our parallettes. They'll sit between the parallettes and push, trying to lift their bottom off the ground. Beam stations. Our first station will be split. Each student will be on opposite ends of the beam, not going past their block, and they're going to work on their proper mount, stand, then practice their safety fall. They'll wobble and jump off, landing on 2 feet to the side of the beam. Our next station will also be split with 1 student on each side of the cones, staying to their end of the beam, and they're going to be working on their passe to arabesque hold. Our next station will be over on the red beams. Each student will be on their own beam, and they're going to be working on their jumps. So 1 foot in front, doing straight jumps, and also trying tuck jumps. Our last station will be split into 2 different activities. Our first activity will be balancing on the circle board, so the students will stand on 1 foot, trying to hold for 5 seconds, and then they can switch, try the opposite foot. Then after sanitizing, they'll switch to the high beam, where they'll be working on complex with a coach. So they'll do various walks, starting with forward, going back and forth with help from their coach.